Hi, I'm Mayor Ron Rakowski, and welcome to the Greenwood Village Mayor Show. It's not only a privilege to conduct the first Mayor Show program of 2011, but also to host the panel of distinguished guests here in the studio today. During this month's program, we will learn about some of the most challenging issues facing the village and our neighboring communities. Issues like the need for transportation improvements in our region that far outpace the amount of funding available, the current status of economic growth in our communities, the challenges to attract and retain businesses, and our local budgets, and what lies ahead to continue the delivery of services as a result of budget cuts. As part of the program, we will discuss how we can continue to collectively work together to craft solutions to improve the quality of life of our individual communities and the entire region. At this point, I'd like to introduce the members of the panel this morning. First, to my immediate right, Peggy Lehman, Council Member District 4 of the City and County of Denver. She's in her second term as a councilwoman for District 4, which encompasses the southeast part of Denver, the far southeast part, and borders with Arapahoe County, Englewood, Greenwood Village, Cherry Hills, and Aurora. She also serves as President Pro Tem of the Council and a member of the Government and Finance Committee and Business, Workforce, and Sustainability Council committees. She serves on the boards of Southeast Business Partnership, Southeast I-25 Urban TMA, and the Urban Drainage. To her immediate right is Mayor Doug Clark of the City of Littleton. He was elected to the Littleton City Council in 1995 and subsequently elected mayor twice by his peers on the City Council, most recently in 2009. He's lived in Colorado for 24 years and is married with 2 daughters. He's a computer consultant and an avid runner. To his immediate right is Kathy Noon, Mayor of the City of Centennial. She was elected mayor in 2009, serves on state, regional, and local committees. She's the founder and president of the Centennial Council of Neighborhoods, an umbrella association comprising of HOAs comprising 22,000 homes. In 2008, she chaired the Centennial Home Rule Charter Commission. And to her immediate right is Mike Wozniak, Mayor of Cherry Hills Village. He was elected mayor in 2006 for his 3rd term. He's a partner in the Denver Natural Resources firm of Beatty and Wozniak, whose firm's practices focuses on representation of natural resource development companies. He has served on the City Council and was previous chair of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals and 2 terms as a commissioner on planning and zoning. To start off, we have a common interest and have had many instances where the law enforcement entities of each of our communities have supported each other on a very regular basis. Centennial is served by Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office, and they interact with our police department as well as does the police department Cherry Hills, Littleton, and the City and County of Denver. So at this point, Mike, if you could give us an overview of what's happening in Cherry Hills Village.
Well, thank you, Mayor Rakowski. First, I want to thank you for having us all here today. We appreciate the opportunity to work together. In my, I guess, 3rd term and almost 6 years now as mayor, the one thing that we really value in our community is the cooperation that we have with our neighbors, which predominantly are Denver and Greenwood Village and the City of Englewood. And the Metro Mayor's Caucus that at least the 4 of us serve on is a wonderful opportunity for us to all work together to share experiences and to make sure that we can provide services to our residents in the most cost-effective manner possible. Cherry Hills is sort of unique of the cities that are represented here. While we're 6.5 square miles in area, it's predominantly a residential community. We have 25 miles of trails, we have 11 churches, number of country clubs, a number of schools and villages, but we really don't have the retail communities to help in our tax base. So our big issue right now is the fact that since we're so dependent upon valuation of real property, that we anticipate another 13% decline in the next 2012 revenues that we receive from property taxes. So we are in the process of a 2-year process of reducing our expenditures. So it's very difficult now to balance the ability to provide the services to your residents that everyone expects with a lot less money. And I know that's something that most of our cities are facing right now, and ours is based upon residential real estate values. So we're facing some challenges now, and one of the great things about having communities involved with each other is we can share services. So hopefully we can talk about that a little later.
Thank you, thank you, Mike. Kathy?
Well, as Centennial is only 10 years old, in fact, this week was our birthday, and we are so glad that many of these folks came as well to help us celebrate. We started our city as a lean and efficient government, did a lot of contracting. We're a low-service provider for our citizens. And so this past economic downfall has really served, our model has served us well. And since we've just been new to this neck of the woods, we are so pleased to be with all of you and to work together and to learn from what you've done as cities that have been here longer. And then hopefully some of what we do can rub off and we can share some of our more unique ways of doing business with some of the more longstanding cities. Our citizens are quite used to shopping and going to the park and using facilities in other people's cities. And we want now to be able to be a community that has things for not only them to do, but to also bring all of you into our city. We have the streets of South Glen. We're going to be having IKEA. We've just passed funding for a large civic center park, and we're hoping now we will have a gathering place for our own citizens, and we'll be able to invite all of you to come in to join us in celebrating what is now Centennial, and we're so pleased to be a part of this panel here today.
And we look forward to visiting you, and thank you. Doug?
Well, the interesting thing here, listening to everybody so far, is how different each one of the municipalities is. Denver is, the Denver metro area is a rather unique area. It's obvious that people value local control very strongly, and yet we have to cooperate because of the close proximity that we have with each other. It's in our best interest to do that, and we do that in a number of areas. And one prime example is Broadway, which starts down in Highlands Ranch, goes through Littleton, into Englewood, and up into Denver, and things like as simple as timing the traffic lights to ensure smooth traffic flow requires cooperation. Yet at the same time, the citizens of all of our communities value very much local control and having a say in how the characteristics of each of our communities are unique. And so it's good to be able to get together with everyone here as we do regularly on a regular basis, whether for be urban drainage and flood control or Metro Mayor's Caucus or Denver Regional Council of Governments, whatever it happens to be. And so thank you for inviting us. It's good to be here.
And thank you, Doug. Peggy?
Well, obviously, Denver is the big player in the district and the region, and our former mayor, now governor, was the one who said we are going to have metro cooperation, and I think the successes that we've all seen from that effort, they get on I-25 or they get on Yosemite or and what they want is good streets and easy traffic and traffic lights that are, go together. And so I think that the regional cooperation is a gem that we just can't afford not to share and treasure.
And if you'll allow me to jump in, I think
Sure.
Denver does a very good job of cooperating. There was a noticeable difference with Mayor Hickenlooper. It's obvious that he reached out and has been very successful, and that's helped the entire metro area.
Thank you.
And I would echo those comments of you, Doug. I think it's exciting, actually, to be in Denver, and as one who has lived in most parts of the United States, we chose Denver, and it's a decision that we made in 1988, and I am absolutely ecstatic that we made that decision. And living where we do, it's really great, and to have the neighbors that we do. Greenwood Village is 61 years this year, so we're a little older, not quite as old as Littleton and Denver, and not quite as old as Cherry Hills. But we've had our budget issues. Fortunately, we had enough surplus to not have to lay off anyone or furlough anyone or have any cuts of major significance in services to the city residents and visitors. And we're hoping that things are going to get a little bit better. We're seeing a little bit of an upturn in our sales tax revenue, which provides that type of tax and related taxes provides 70% of the city's revenue. So we have our fingers crossed that we are seeing the upturn of the economy. Let's get into transportation. Roads and bridges and public transit need major improvements, in that CDOT says that 34% of the Colorado's roads are in poor or mediocre condition. 16% of the bridges are structurally deficient or functionally obsolete, and the congestion like that we saw this morning is out there even with T-Rex. So are there any projects that any of you have completed in your cities or that you have ready to go to construction or under construction that have alleviated these issues?
I'll start. One of the things we've done internally is, without major construction, was we've taken all of our traffic signals. Not only have we made them LED, but we're putting in all of the electronic components so that we can now use those or monitor those and change all those lights and timings so that we can make traffic flow more efficiently. So we're starting with the things that are the most energy efficient and the easiest to do, and then we'll go forward with some road projects. And we certainly have had some major ones that have been going on in our city, even though not necessarily by our city, with the Arapahoe Road and I-25 CDOT improvements that were just put in there. We have the Arapahoe and Parker Road flyover under construction now. So there are two major projects that are going on or just completed in our city that we think will really help things flow. But there are some minor things that we're going to be doing as a city, and we're working. A lot of the Centennial streets are actually state highways, Arapahoe Road, University. So we don't have control over some of those, but we are working in conjunction with not only CDOT, but with our neighboring communities to be able to at least have the traffic flow as smoothly and as efficiently as possible.
Doug, don't you have a flyover near your neighborhood under construction right now?
We have a big flyover. It's actually right outside of Littleton, but it's down at C470 in Santa Fe, and it will be a flyover to take southbound Santa Fe traffic onto eastbound C470 without having to go through the traffic light that's down there currently, and that intersection gets congested and backed up every evening. So the completion of that will help the traffic down there quite a bit. The flyover starts in the city boundary, but the intersection is outside the city boundary.
Any other projects of note?
We don't have any big projects that are going on. And while all of us here know how transportation is funded, the viewers may not, and it might be worthwhile talking a little bit about that.
That's a good suggestion.
It's, as Mayor Noon pointed out, there's all of our municipalities have traffic that goes through the city that comes from other parts of the metro area. Santa Fe and Broadway are two examples in Littleton. And one of the ways that the state legislature has handled that historically is by declaring those state highways and then funding a portion of the maintenance on that as a recognition that part of the maintenance is dictated by traffic that doesn't originate or terminate in the municipalities. So that's one way that the roads that go through the metro area and also through our municipalities are funded. There's a 22-cent gas tax that goes into a highway user tax fund, and then part of that money is distributed back to the municipalities. We get about a little over $1 million a year from that, which we use on roadways. So we, like all the rest of you, are constantly maintaining the roads. Our roads are in fairly good shape through the use of that.
Mike?
Well, one of the things that's difficult for our city is we have 3 state highways, just like many of us, with Bellevue and Hamden and University. And we have taken efforts to prevent what we call cut-through traffic, where everybody sees how busy those streets are and then uses Dahlia or any cross street they can to go through the city. And usually it goes about 40 miles an hour or more on small streets. So we have taken some efforts to do traffic calming things on some of the streets. But one of the problems long range about that is it makes it much more difficult, of course, to cut through, but it also adds to the congestion on the state highways. One of our concerns, as Mayor Clark mentioned, we receive some money from the state for maintenance, but there is a push from the state that our residents ought to know about, that the municipalities ought to take more responsibility for the state highways that run through their cities. That would have a devastating effect, at least on our budget, and I'm sure on all of our cities' budgets. So from a local control point of view, as Doug mentioned, we are really pushing back to say we can't take control of Hampden Avenue as it goes through our city or University or Bellevue. On the other hand, there are some benefits of taking some control over that. The other thing that's happened with transportation, and we all see it, is if we take the Bellevue light rail station where there's transportation-oriented development. It's a wonderful development. On the west side there, though, there's a planned community of not only retail development, but also significant residential high-rises. We did a very preliminary study with Greenwood Village and showed that if that's built, there'll be about 6,000 more cars per day heading west on Bellevue from I-25. There's really nowhere for those cars to go. So that sometimes we, on the regional basis, really need to get out in front of those issues, because unfortunately our funding just doesn't support being able to take care of that traffic.
Peggy?
Well, there is a Bellevue study plan, do you know? And at Denver, because Denver has the north side of that area of Bellevue, and SpyMed, which is the metropolitan district, is participating. And we're all going to sit down with Arapahoe County and you guys and us and see if we can't at least address that issue. And I think because we have talked and worked together and did things like that prior to this, it makes it so much easier to get a problem like that addressed, or at least dealt with.
I agree. Are there any, want to go back to
Yeah.
that point in a second, but I did want to give you an opportunity to speak about any projects that you'd like to
Well-
highlight in Denver.
Denver has 9 of the light rail stations, and they're all coming into Union Station. So one of our huge projects is Union Station, and we are working with the help of federal funds and Denver Regional Council of Government funds to get that to be a real vibrant, vital, efficient, effective place. So that's probably one of our huge ones.
Your comment about transportation cooperation is right on, and a great segue to one point I want to mention, which is Centennial and Greenwood Village are bisected by I-25. And we have had wonderful cooperation between Centennial, Greenwood Village, and the leadership of the county commissioners of Arapahoe County for our big issue, which is I-25 and Arapahoe. As you may remember, at the last minute during T-Rex, both Colorado Boulevard and Hampton interchanges were upgraded at the last minute. The next one to be upgraded was I-25 in Arapahoe. It didn't happen. Now we have major safety concerns of traffic that backs up trying to exit, particularly southbound, onto Arapahoe Road from I-25, and that traffic is backing up at a dead stop on the interstate and actually getting into travel lanes, which makes for a very, very unsafe condition. And we're moving along now into the environmental study of what the best solution to that problem is, and we're getting cooperation from, not only really great cooperation from the 3 entities that are involved, but also we would hope to have a good ear for both those members of the Congress in Washington and the Senate that represent Colorado to help us in this tough time to get that problem taken care of before a tragedy occurs. That's in the Bellevue study, which Peggy's already mentioned, are the 2 major areas of roads for us. Let's talk about, move out of transportation and talk into economic development. And I think this is where we can really educate our viewers in one way, in that the South Metro area generates approximately 750,000 jobs in Colorado, 24% of the employment in Colorado, and 35% in Metro Denver is generated by the Southeast Metro economy, and almost 30% of the earnings in Colorado are traced to that corridor. It's a real economic engine. There's 39 million square feet of office space, 20,000 businesses, and in effect, a study validated by one of the professors at CSU that 25% of the state's EDP, or economic domestic product or gross domestic product, is generated by this area. How does the office and retail market look in your city, Doug?
Well, our retail sales tax 2010 to 2009 is up about 4%.
Great.
Vacancy rate, we don't have precise figures for exactly inside the city limits, but anecdotally, we think that Class B office space vacancy is around 15% in the city. So it's, you know, we're coming out of the same recession everybody else is, but things are looking up right now, and we think that we're doing pretty well considering what's happening to the rest of the country.
Well, and Kathy, we're all excited that you guys will have, and I'll let you do the details here in a second, a multi-state draw of a Big Blue building at Dry Creek and I-25. Would you tell us about some detail about the economic development in the city, and start with IKEA?
I'll start with IKEA. IKEA is well underway. I'm sure everyone that drives I-25, you can't miss it. It's very big, very blue. We're happy to have them coming to our city and to our region, and actually to our state. IKEA does have a draw that goes into multiple states. Right now, they anticipate that they have 75,000 current Colorado customers, and they don't even have a store in our state. So people that have shopped out of state and driven to get something, or over the internet. So IKEA will be a huge draw to our area, and we certainly as a city are starting to plan how traffic will flow. We're being very proactive. We're going to be adding a lane on South Chester to eastbound County Line Road with the cooperation of our partners in the TMA and the SpyMed district and with IKEA. And our sheriff is going to be working on how the traffic can be handled, especially during the grand opening. So IKEA will be a huge draw for the economic engines of this area, and it'll also stress our traffic area, and we know that it will, and we're working with our partners. We're working with Lone Tree to see how we can make things flow on County Line, and working with CDOT as well to see. We don't want the same backup at County Line that we now have at Arapahoe, waiting to get off to go to IKEA. So we're trying to be as proactive as we can, and I don't know that that's all going to happen by this fall when IKEA opens, but we want the dialogue to be there. So we are working on that. And other transportation, other retail and office, our office space is on either side of I-25, and we are about 15 to 16% vacancy rates on those office buildings right now, which in this market is not really that bad. It's, many parts of the nation have been hit far greater than that. Our retail sales have actually, we saw a boost in 2010 of about 23% higher than 2009. And part of that is because of the streets of South Glen. We took that development, it was offline while it was being reconstructed into a wonderful place to live, work, and play. And now not only are there stores and restaurants and a library, we've now moved about 600 jobs are located on that site. So that has been responsible for an uptick in our sales tax, in addition to our big box like a Walmart or something that typically does well during a down economy. A Walmart would do well. So we've actually come through this a little better than 2009, and so we're hopeful for 2011 that trend continues.
Well, it does have a really great look to it. And Mike, can you have any ideas on what we can do together to ensure our region remains a first choice for business and to ensure continued success and economic growth?
Well, it's an interesting question because as a community that only has modest retail along Hampden, we look at most of our people and where they actually do their shopping and how do we attract people. By having safe neighborhoods, by having a good education system. Every time Tom Clark talks to us, he talks about education first, because as businesses relocate, they want us to have an educated workforce.
Can you tell our viewers who Tom Clark is?
Well, Tom is the chairman of the Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce, and he's a wonderful spokesperson for attracting business and industry here. And from each of our communities, the wonderful part about the South Metro area is we all do work together. And so I look at Mayor Noon's success as a great thing for the southern part of the region. But I think really looking at our education funding, which is way beyond the scope of this discussion, is a serious problem for us continuing to attract new businesses here. But a world-class transportation system is the second thing that most companies look at when they talk about where they want to relocate. So educated workforce and a transportation system. So we have Fast Tracks that we all know faces some serious financial issues, but one that I know at least the mayors really feel strongly needs to be completed. That plus education, and have a wonderful part of this. The connectivity of the trails between Greenwood Village and Cherry Hills and Englewood and Denver is a jewel.
And we connect to Centennial.
That's right.
That's right.
Right.
And now we're accessing Centennial.
And to
Right.
Littleton on the other side. So
It's a wonderful, I think making this part of our metro area better all the time in all of the human amenities really attracts business and continues to foster growth.
yeah, in fact, two of our council members presently are cyclists that work downtown in Denver and go all the way from Greenwood Village on their bikes through Denver and down to work. Maybe not today, it's a little chilly out there, but during the week. Peggy, any thoughts on this general subject you'd like to share with us?
Several.
Please.
All right, like the regions, I tried to look up the unemployment rate of just Denver, but we don't have that. But the region is about 8.9%,
Which is a little less than the national average.
which is a little less than that. So that's a good sign. What's happening in my district as far as retail goes, but I think is happening throughout Denver, is that I call it retail leakage. And that means that many of our stores are leaving our shopping centers. So in my District 4, I have fairly empty shopping centers. I'm really concerned about that. And I think the impact of that on all of us is that people are shopping a very different way now. People shop the internet much more. And 50% of the Denver budget is sales tax. So it is truly a problem that I'm working on right now, and would like any help and suggestions I could get. But we are doing an economic study. Our Office of Economic Development is doing a study on just the demographics of who we are and what we are. And if I would love to hear, because I went to the National League of Cities convention, and Doug in Littleton was just a star there on their success of their downtown. If he would say just a little bit about that, because that was really a success.
Please.
Well, our downtown is doing fabulous, and we were first incorporated as a city in the 1890s, and so it truly is a small town downtown with a variety of businesses, and it's doing very well now. But I was thinking of the exact issue that you're talking about as driving over here. I think part of the problem is the whole metro area is probably overbuilt on retail. And so it's not just Denver that has an issue of stores moving out of shopping centers, because you build shopping centers, they do well at the beginning, then retail trends change and new stores get built, and so some of that retail leaves those shopping centers. And I think that's an issue with all of our municipalities is you then have the problem of what do you do with old retail shopping centers that aren't functioning as retail shopping centers. And it's a common problem. It's probably going to continue to be a problem as long as we're driven, as we are, by retail sales tax to fund the portion of the budget that we have, and we tend to overbuild new retail, and that basically drives the vacancies that happen in the older retail. So the real issue, I think, is figuring out how to age those old shopping centers well, and then how to convert them into a beneficial use that helps the community. And part of that conversion gets to what Mike was talking about, because the way to attract businesses is to have a community where employees want to live that work in the business. And that means having very good education, that means having low crime, that means having good transportation, and that means having a community that people want to live in. And all of this is tied together. I guess it's doing the basics well so that the other stuff will follow after that.
Well, I think we have in the southeast area 2 great examples where South Glen was rebuilt as the streets of South Glen, and that is a really attractive situation. And then we had Cinderella City, for you old timers, that in Englewood, that was leveled and now has been rebuilt with the Civic Center over there. So I think there is a public-private partnership of bringing that development together to make, and I think this is something that can be said about all the communities in the southeast area, to be business friendly, because business pays the bills. Government does not generate revenue. It taxes to take that revenue to provide services. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that the private sector is where the jobs come from and where the revenue comes from to provide the taxes to provide services. So that's why we always need to be thinking business friendly. Now that doesn't mean that we don't still have regulations and master planning and zoning, particularly on a large level, but at the same time I think we need to be cognizant of, as I say, who pays the bills. Speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about budgets and efficiencies in local government. We've already touched several times on recession. We think we're out from under and it having impacted government budgets. Are there any community short-term and long-term goals to sustain current service levels in your communities? Peggy?
When Mayor Hickenlooper left to become governor, he said, we're going to do, it calls it a structural financial task force. And he has called together about 13 people from the business community, from the nonprofit community, from some of the universities, and also from the city departments. And we're going to sit down and we're going to analyze how our city is raising money and what we can do better and what is not working, and just kind of present a plan and some information for the new mayor, whoever that may be in July, so that they can go forward. But we have decided we need to look that the old way isn't working and that we need to find a new way.
Any other comments, Mike?
Well, the main thing that we've tried to work on is shared services lately, and we have a great relationship with Mayor Woodward in Englewood. They now are maintaining all of our city vehicles. So I've been able to outsource that because they had a much larger facility to maintain those. We've worked with Arapahoe County, and they're now doing all of our dispatch for police work, and they're also doing our 9/11 initial responses. So I think in these times we really have to find a way to work together. I know that between Greenwood Village and Cherry Hills, we maintain the medians on Bellevue together. I mean, there's certain things that we have to do, and we have to continue to do those because the duplication that we have sometimes is not necessary. And so those are all things that I think that we all can continue to strive to do.
In fact, I had the wonderful experience of coming out of my development recently during one of our snowstorms, and just making the turn in front was a Denver snowplow, and I really appreciated that, Peggy.
I've worked on that for 8 years. You laugh, but 8 years I've worked on that.
You know.
Well, in
Kathy?
Centennial, because of the way we started, most of the services that we provide are a contract basis. So we do things a little bit differently anyway. And our sheriff, we're contracted with the Arapahoe County Sheriff for our law enforcement. We're the safest city, over 75,000 in the state for the 6th year in a row, so they're doing something right. But as far as our public works, our animal control, our code enforcement, all of those things are done through an RFP process that we tailor what services we want to what our citizens want, and then we go out to contract and bid. And we always bid an in-house model as well, so that we can compare what would this cost if we did it with our own employees and what would this cost, out in the private sector. That model has been working very well for us. It keeps not only our costs low because we can when the recession goes down, we were able to make some adjustments to that. But it also, if we're bringing something in-house, we realize that we're competing with our in-house model, has to compete with the private sector. So that's really worked well for us. In fact, we get a lot of calls from communities throughout the nation asking how it works and wanting to know what we did. And for us, it was a little bit easier because we started that way. But for other cities, they're looking at that same model, whether it be just code enforcement or perhaps building services. And that's worked well with us, and we like that model.
Doug, anything you could share with us on that point?
Well, I mean, broadly speaking, outside the context of the recession, there's really two basic principles. One is that to constantly look at how efficiently you're doing things and to drive the cost as low as possible, and Littleton, as well as everybody, is doing that all the time. The second is the balancing act of making sure that we are providing the services that our citizens want us to provide and are willing to pay for. And sometimes that's an adjustment, because sometimes the services that citizens wanted 20 years ago aren't necessarily the same things that they want now. And so that's an adjustment of adding services or taking away some services depending on what the needs of the citizens are and what they're willing to pay for, what they value as important enough to pay for through taxes.
And I think that's a good segue into the last area I'd like to cover, which is confidence in local government in terms of hearing from our citizens. What do you think in your communities the citizen confidence level is of what's going on at local government? Mike?
Well, I think I'm blessed. We have very active citizens. I mean, we have all kinds of citizens committees. To Doug's point, we were planning on building a new city center and a fire station, police department. We went back to the community. We had so many volunteers to get involved in a community effort to evaluate whether we should do that and spend that money during a recession. We have active participants. From everybody from that lives in the city wants to be on a committee, so we're sort of blessed. The other side of that is we've really pushed community policing, and our police chief, who has been sort of a leader in this and has been a police officer for 40 years, has really developed a partnership with the citizens. So I hear a lot of, obviously as mayors and council people, we get a lot of complaints, so I don't want to overstate this, but lately, at least in the last couple of years, I've heard a lot more positive enforcement when people realize that we're doing more with less, just like they have to do in their own budgets and like they have to do in their own businesses. And after all, every dollar that we receive as cities, it's our citizens' money. It's not ours. And if we think about that each time, we realize that we can establish that trust. So the general upset with politicians that we see on a national basis, I certainly don't see on a local basis.
Kathy?
We just did a citizen survey this past year in the fall, and our results were very, very encouraging. Over 90% of our citizens think that their quality of life in our city is good or excellent, and 75% think the city services are good or excellent. So that's an indication that we're going down the right path and we're giving the citizens what they want for, as Doug said, what they're willing to pay for. Everyone would love to have, top-rate services, but it comes at a cost, and it's always a balancing act between us. So I do believe that our citizens are very engaged as well. We have a number of boards and commissions. The way our city was formed, the fact that it's so young, we have a high level of citizens that are asking to be involved. How can they be more involved? And we're actually working now to get our business community more involved with our government. So there will be a business advisory board that's going to be working with the city to help bounce ideas, because we do want to be business friendly and to encourage all new businesses and to come into our city and to help those that are there remain.
Doug?
Well, I agree with Mike. My perception is that most of the citizens have a fairly high confidence in their local elected officials. As you go up the hierarchy, that may not be necessarily the case. And part of the reason is because we're so very responsive. Part of the reason is we have to fix problems as they occur at the local level, because we can't do deficit spending like they can at the federal level. And part of it is if they don't like something that's happening, they can call us and get hold of somebody that then gets something done. And that's not necessarily the case at other levels of government.
That's exactly right. Peggy?
I agree about they like their local, and they're very active in their local elections for the most part. Denver is a different place. Denver has 600,000 citizens, and so to have everybody in our community involved is not even possible. And so our organizations are much larger. And whereas all of you have to balance a budget, we have to balance a budget of almost $1 billion, of $900 million. And for the last 4 years, we've had to cut, and for 2012, we have to cut $100 million. So, I mean, we're just working with huge numbers, but our goals and our values are, throughout this whole region, are the same. We all like open spaces, we all like good retail, we all like lots of parks and nice things we like, good restaurants we want, good traffic we want. And I just think that if we all do this, constantly do this, through all sorts of our cooperative things and ways, we'll get there.
Well, let me echo some comments here that we've been very blessed in having a great citizenry, but I think the one thing I don't want to overlook, and I'm sure I'm speaking for all of you, is staff. Elected officials are there to be contacted by their constituents and to listen. But we don't go out and fix the potholes. We don't go out and police the traffic issues. We have a staff that does that, and we have great people in public service in the southeast area, in all of our cities. And in our particular city, we've had a great city manager, Jim Sanderson, who's in fact works with the city managers in the other cities here. And we just have a brand new police chief, John Jackson, who is very involved in community policing, replacing a fellow who retired with 30 years service, a great guy, and just right on down the line. And then lastly, I am truly blessed as having followed a great lady as mayor who for 7 years kept us on track and did a great job, Nancy Sharp, now our county commissioner for Greenwood Village, parts of Centennial, Cherry Hills, and not quite Littleton, but close. But she actually offices in Littleton, so I guess that counts. And lastly, the other great people that I work with are the 8 members of our city council. We have quite what I consider a blue ribbon group that works together. We have different opinions, but we're very collegial, and we've done a lot to try and keep the city going and not have any debt and continue the basic levels of city services without any interruption. So with that, any closing thoughts from anyone? If not, I want to thank you each for coming. It's been a great morning, and we look forward to sharing this with not only Channel 8 in Greenwood Village, but with your various forms of media to contact the citizens. As you learned today, our cities have a number of challenges to protect and preserve the quality of life of our communities and the region. We hope that you will consider our challenges as opportunities for you to take part in addressing these issues. With your help, our communities will move forward into the 21st century. As residents, business owners, and visitors, we need your input on how we are doing. Together, we can build upon the foundation that has fostered the current success of our great communities. It's a wrap from Greenwood Village. I'm Mayor Ron Rakowski. Thank you for joining us here on GVTV Channel 8.